Before the episode starts, I'd just like to apologize for my really bad sound. I'm still sort of in between sound setups and still figuring stuff out, so please bear with me. Hi. Welcome to episode 4 of Nate and Kamara Talk About Movies and probably some other stuff too. Hi, I'm Nate.
I'm Kamara.
And we're going to talk about one movie, because we only watched one movie for today. And probably some other stuff too.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, welcome to Horror Week. Spooky. Boo. It's Horror Week. Last week was animation. This week is horror. Next week is crime. And then comedy, sci-fi, fantasy, I think.
Yeah.
We watched a movie for today. It's called Eyes Without a Face. It's a 1960s French... Oh, it's from 1960. It's a French film. It's sort of a classic of the horror genre.
Very reminiscent of Psycho. I don't know which one came first,
though.
Well,
Psycho came after this.
Yeah,
Psycho came in 1963. This was 1960.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that reminiscent of Psycho. I think it's just that it's shot in black and white and that there's a big house. Well, actually, no, you're right. You're right.
It's
there's
very,
some stuff.
Yeah.
There are some lighting choices in the film that reminded me of Psycho.
Yeah.
A little bit. But we'll talk about that soon.
Yeah.
So let's introduce the movie. So the movie was Eyes Without a Face. I can read a summary from IMDb. I will read a summary from IMDb.
While he finds that, I'll just how's your guys' day?
Why'd you say so creepy?
Food? Huh?
You sound so weird when you say that.
Food? Huh?
Oh, happy Passover to everyone out there who's celebrating. Happy Easter too, I guess. But that was yesterday. Anyways. and here I thought that as soon as we get into this new week, suddenly we'd be like in tip-top shape.
It's not happening.
No, it's not. No. That's okay. It's all part of the charm. Okay. So Eyes Without a Face. Super serious movie. Eyes Without a Face, directed. It's a 1960 film, directed by a guy named Georges Franju. I think he's French. I don't know.
He's French.
Or it's Georges Franju, but I don't think it's Georges Franju. That's the way that Guillermo del Toro said it. He says Georges Franju, so I'll just assume that's correct. And the plot summary, really roughly, is a surgeon causes an accident which leaves his daughter disfigured, and he goes to extreme lengths to give her a new face. So the summary sounds pretty creepy, but when you watch the movie, personally, I did not find it very scary.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Of course, it's a film from 1960. It was made, 60 years ago, so I don't expect that, I don't find Psycho that scary anymore. And personally, I feel like Eyes Without a Face, for me at least, is going to be one of those movies that I'm going to enjoy talking about more than I'll enjoy, watching.
I agree.
Again and again, because there's a lot to dissect in this movie, and there's a lot to talk about. But the actual experience of watching it, personally, was a little boring.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about why in a second, but you should give your brief feelings on it.
So I agree. I found this movie kind of boring. That's also partially because I don't really enjoy older movies. Sorry. I think
black and white, I just can't do it.
It doesn't do it anymore.
Black and white, they don't see color. Okay, anyways.
Oh, man. I found the movie a bit boring. I feel like the pacing was a bit out there, which kind of led to the climax of the movie feeling a bit weak. That's just the base thing. There's obviously more to talk about, but Yeah, overall, I didn't see it as something I'd watch again, you know?
Yeah. I didn't fully, I didn't like love the movie. I didn't hate it, but I totally understand why it is as influential as it is. And I can only imagine what it would have been like in 1960.
Seeing this movie,
sitting down to watch this movie. Yeah, where like in the movie, I was surprised he cuts off someone's face, and it looks pretty good. You know, there's a scene where the surgeon is cutting. I mean, this movie was made 60 years ago, so we might spoil the plot.
Yeah.
It was made 60 years ago, guys. Come on. But there's a scene where the surgeon cuts this girl's face off, and there's like blood coming out. It's really kind of gross. And I was watching it, and I was cringing, I was surprised by it because it's a 1960 film, so I wasn't expecting to have that type of connection with it. But I feel like my biggest issue with the movie was that I didn't have an emotional connection to neither the victims nor the surgeon or his daughter. Like, I didn't feel connected to their story at all, mainly because I feel like the movie didn't. And maybe this is something that older movies tend to do, because I've seen a fair amount of older movies that don't necessarily, that sort of, this is going to go wrong. No, that's not true. I mean, there are a lot of great older movies, but I feel like also, and this is just a matter of, there have been a lot of movies made between this movie and now, so I'm sure I'm also used to these themes being talked about, and the imagery I've probably seen a million times. But I feel like this movie didn't fully set up its characters and why you should care. Like, it mainly just said, like, this surgeon, his daughter died, but the actor who plays the surgeon didn't show much emotion, which obviously it's because his daughter's not dead, but the movie opens with him, he's not crying, he has no emotional connection at all, and so I just wasn't feeling invested
if I can add,
in the story.
I feel like, of course I can add.
Of course you can add. I mean, can I add? Yeah. Yes, you can add. Please add.
I feel like, so I don't know if Psycho came out before or after. You said it came out after. Yeah, so
Psycho came out after.
I feel like Psycho does everything this movie does, but better. In the sense that they have like a very similar structure with the whole setting up like a fake main character, going into like a police subplot, and then like going on from there, you know? Yeah,
I guess so. But I mean, and I'm a huge fan of Psycho.
Yeah.
I think that Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates Psycho is one of the best performances in a movie of all time. A lot of people disagree with that, but I think he was spectacular in Psycho. I love that movie. And I feel like there are some structural similarities, but that might just be because these are two sort of cheap horror movies made in black and white from 60 years ago. So it might just be going, oh, like they're in black and white, they're horror. You know, there's a subplot about family in both of them. In Psycho, it's a little different.
Yeah, no, but still, like in Psycho, this obviously a spoiler, but again, like this is an old movie.
Everyone knows Psycho.
Yeah, everyone knows Psycho. But in Psycho,
if you haven't seen Psycho, you know how it ends. Yeah, you've seen it a million times.
You've definitely seen that one scene that we all know.
The shout, whatever. Keep going.
But I feel like with Psycho, they set up, even with like the characters that die, they set up a good portion of the movie to kind of give that character backstory and make you feel connected to them, so that when they actually die or when something happens to them, then you actually feel bad. In this movie, it's kind of just like, here's this character. She has like 3 scenes. Yeah. She's in like this part of the movie. Then something happens, and then we move to another character. You know? Yeah,
it was one of those things where I was watching this movie and I could tell what the movie wanted me to be feeling, and I appreciated it. I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
Like, by no means is Eyes Without a Face a bad movie. Of course not. And it's a very, I was about to say it's a very inspirational movie. It's not an inspirational movie. It's a movie that has inspired a lot of great films after, and it's people should go and watch it if only for the historical context of the movie, I guess. But I feel like it was a mix of like sort of non-emotive acting, like all the acting in Psycho. Like, even if you don't learn too much about Norman Bates, until later on the movie. As soon as you see him, you already feeling
know who he is,
this very unsettling feeling, and that's from a matter of lens choice and shot type and all these things.
Yeah,
and maybe that's because it's an Alfred Hitchcock movie and he's Alfred Hitchcock, So there's sort of different levels here. But yeah, I didn't feel emotionally involved in the Eyes Without a Face story and with the characters, and so while I enjoyed the visuals, I just couldn't get into the movie. So when it was done, I sort of felt indifferent. Also, before we sort of get into the deeper thematical stuff about the movie, because there's some really interesting themes to talk about in this movie, the music is weird. The music, I feel like I was watching
a clown
it. Yeah, it sounds like carnival music, which maybe that's what they were going for, and it was the 60s, so people were scared easier. I don't know. I wasn't allowed. I mean, nothing against movies from the 60s, like Psycho. Well, Psycho doesn't scare me. But
it just didn't set up the tone.
Yeah, it just didn't.
Well.
Like, the movie starts with this woman driving down this really dark road with, like, a sort of dead body in her backseat, which is a really great opening visual. I was interested. I was like, what's going to happen? But then you have, like, this, like, weird carnival music of like horns, and it sounds like a clown should be jumping out and juggling in a few minutes, but she's like throwing this like disfigured body like into a river.
Yeah.
So it just felt like a really weird tonal thing where I can only imagine that if the music wasn't in the opening scene, I think I would have enjoyed it more. Just because I feel like there would have been a little bit more tension about what's going on in the backseat versus what's going on in the front seat and what's happening. And then from that point on, I feel like the movie, it just sort of didn't fully come together to me.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of... Yeah, go.
No, I agree with that. Like, with the movie after that point kind of felt out of order. I feel like the ending should have been pushed, been earlier, and there maybe should have been something after that. Like, there were definitely a couple parts in the movie that went nowhere. For example, the whole police subplot, that didn't really do anything.
Yeah, well, it sort of did.
But not really. Like,
bit.
You kind of expect them to have a bigger role, but then they kind of just leave, and then...
Yeah, and
everything plays on without them.
In the last 5 minutes,
without their influence. And the ending, that was weird. Turned into a Disney movie for a bit.
Well, but I really like the ending. But we'll talk about the deeper thematical stuff. Yeah. Well, okay, so then let's talk about the deeper
thematical stuff.
Yeah, the deeper thematical stuff. So one of the major themes. I keep turning away from the microphone. I also just realized I've been chewing a piece of gum for half of this. So I wonder.
Hey, they can listen to it. They'll enjoy it.
You'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy the gum. I'm chewing some bubble gum. I don't know if it's kosher for Passover.
Is it Hubba Bubba?
No, it's not Hubba Bubba. What am I, a freak? No. Anyways, I was taking some notes during the movie and afterwards. One of the biggest themes of this movie is beauty versus brutality, and sort of how those contrast and compare. And like, again, I feel like the movie as a metaphor for those things was great. And I feel like this can be one of those movies that I'm going to, again, love to talk about and think about and read about. But I don't think I'm ever going to really feel the need to watch it again unless I'm forced to. Like, I feel like it's pretty similar to like one of those books in English class that has themes that you absolutely love, like Frankenstein or like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily love the experience of reading those books, but I loved talking about those books, and I loved, understanding those books and the books as metaphor and all these things. I feel like this is one of those movies.
Yeah. Definitely some of the more interesting parts of the movie were when those themes were brought up. It kind of leaves you think, like, there's a whole section of the movie where you think everything is resolved.
Right.
And then you slowly figure out that, okay, it's not as simple as it seems, And that's interesting because it brings those themes into it and makes the movie a lot more bearable to sit through.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's definitely not a bad movie. It's got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. It's just not, especially because I went into it expecting it to be this like complete masterpiece. Yeah. Because this movie is hailed as a masterpiece, and I just didn't. Personally, I didn't feel it to be that.
Yeah.
Nothing bad about the movie, but let's get back to the central, to the deeper conversation, please, Kamara. Okay. Yeah. So one of the big metaphors in the movie is beauty versus brutality, because the movie is all about this girl who, in a car accident, she gets horribly disfigured, and her dad, who's a world-renowned surgeon, basically kidnaps girls and tries to cut off their faces to put onto her face so she can regain her beauty, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, and there's also this really great image. There's this really creepy sort of image in the movie of this girl, of the main girl. Her name is, what's her name? It's not Claudette. It's
yeah. I almost had Cinderella, but it's not. It's like Claudetta or something. I don't know.
I'll tell you right now. Her name is Christine or Christiane.
Yeah.
Let's just go with Christine.
Yeah.
We should have done our research a little more. Right. But anyways, so there's this whole image where she's forced to wear this clay mask or something. I don't know what it's made out of, but she's forced to wear this mask that looks terrifying.
It's completely blank.
It's completely blank. It really blends in with her skin too, and it's a really scary image. But obviously, there's a deeper metaphor there of her having to wear this mask to be beautiful versus what her true face is, and the outside pressures of the world maybe trying to force her to look a certain way. Because at the end of the movie, she ends up killing her dad and his assistant, because I guess she's sick of them killing people to try and get her a new face, and then she walks out with this dove on her hand with this mask on, and she looks really very creepy. But it seems like in a way she's ascended to this, I don't know what the hell I'm saying.
She's accepting her, her
she's
state.
accepting the way that she looks, and the way that she is, and she wants sort of all this bloodshed to stop. Which there's a metaphor there as well. And of course, I wouldn't be the one to fully understand because I'm a man. But the metaphor of, how the world forces women to look and feel about themselves.
Yeah.
I think is really strong in this movie. And also it's a really, it is a kind of sad movie in a way, since it really sort of roots itself in guilt. In sadness, because really it's all about this surgeon who got into a car crash with his daughter and horribly disfigured her, and he feels like he's totally ruined her life. So he goes and he kidnaps a whole bunch of girls to cut their faces off to put onto her to try and restore the thing that he took away from her.
And it never works.
Yeah. And this is something that Guillermo del Toro was talking about when he was talking about this movie, because I watched the video of him talking about it, and he was talking about how everything in the movie, no matter how horrible, they're all acts of love, they all come from the surgeon wanting to do right, wanting to fix the things that he's done wrong, which for a horror movie is great, to have all these horrible acts sort of rooted in character is not always something that happens. But then again, what ends up happening is that, for me at least, I wasn't engaged in the character, so when it happened, I didn't feel all that sad. I would watch the movie and I would go this director wants me to feel sad in this scene, and I would go, okay, I get it, but I wasn't feeling sad in this scene.
Yeah. And I definitely feel it's kind of a simple one. The movie itself was basically just commentary on the cost of beauty. And I found it to be interesting in the fact that he fakes her death. Mm-hmm. She's dead. She's basically dead until he can find her a new face.
More than once. Yeah. Or he certainly tries to, because every girl who he cuts his face off, she dies some way or another, and then they try and, I don't know.
It's basically, she basically can't have a life until she has a new face, until she's quote unquote beautiful again. And, as I said, it never works. And and that was a very interesting part of the movie for me. Just seeing how the way that the movie's plot progresses aligns perfectly with the message that it's trying to portray. Even though I have my own issues with the pacing, it definitely worked in that sense. Maybe not in like a sitting in a movie theater, just quick movie type thing.
But I have to wonder. I also wonder what it'd be like if I had just seen this in a movie theater.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like my investment with movies, like unless I'm watching like a great movie, like I was watching Mean Streets yesterday, and I was at home, and there are people like walking around talking, there's noise and all that stuff, but I was so invested in the movie because Mean Streets is fantastic. But I feel like if I had seen this movie in a dark theater, without my phone, there's no people talking, there's no one listening to music or calling their friend, I feel like I would have just been into it more, which is no fault of my family. It's just a matter of what the situation is now, But again, like what you were talking about, I feel like is just another example of this movie working, I feel like, better as a piece to analyze than it does
to watch
as a piece, like there are plenty of great images and there's a lot of poetic beauty in it, but for me, if I can't get into the movie, I can't get into the movie. You know, if I don't feel connected to the characters and everything else that happens doesn't really affect me that much. Like it could be the most gory Saw movie ever, but if I'm not, but if I have no stake in the story, then all this bloodshed and all this stuff means nothing to me. And I feel like this movie is an example of that.
I also, to add on, I feel like the movie kind of kicked itself in the sense that the doctor was not very sympathetic. Like I didn't sympathize with him that much. He was kind of a jerk too.
He was, which maybe I guess you maybe the metaphor there is you have all these like unsympathetic, cold characters trying to push what you should look like onto a sort of innocent young girl. But if he's basically the main character of your movie, and the actor is playing him so coldly, there's no way that you can connect with this character.
It makes it difficult to understand. Like, you can understand the motivations, but it makes it hard to sympathize with him and want him to succeed. Like, you don't want him to kill people, obviously.
Right. Well, but no one
when
does
he does,
in a horror movie.
When he does, you just don't, understand his reasoning.
And personally, I understood his reasoning, but I feel like had I been more invested in the character, I would have had more of a stake in, like, when he kills people, I'd be like, obviously you shouldn't kill people, but also he's doing it for this reason, like, out of love, so it would make that decision much more complex.
Yeah.
And again, maybe this is because it's a movie from 1960s, so maybe they weren't going for psychological complexity.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, you have movies like The 400 Blows, which is a very like emotionally complex movie. And so I don't know. I don't know if we can necessarily attribute our feelings to this movie to it being from 60 years ago. But people love this movie, so maybe we're wrong.
Maybe it's very unpopular. What we're saying. Okay,
like,
aside from themes, though, there was one part of the movie that just confused me a bit. Can you tell me why the police had that one girl dye her hair and go to the doctor's office?
That's the girl who ends up running away.
Yeah, I know, but like how did they suspect the doctor?
Well, they didn't know. What happened was Christiane, I don't know.
Yeah.
The main character of the movie. She called her fiance who thought she was dead. Right, and she said his name, it was like shock, whatever.
Yeah.
And he hung up and he recognized her voice, but he figured she was dead, but maybe not, so he went to the police. And then the police suspected her because also it was all like beautiful, like blonde girls who had been dying or something. So they suspected the doctor, and then they got this girl who they got for for shoplifting to dye her hair blue, go on this police work. She almost lost her face because of it.
Yeah,
so
it's very reckless.
Those cops really did not follow up.
Yeah,
on their plan.
Yeah, I was just a bit confused about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that clears that quote unquote plot hole up.
Yeah. Well, like I don't know if it's a like
it wasn't a plot hole. It just kind of I just didn't pick that up, which may be a mistake on the movie's part. But I don't know.
Most of this movie, I feel like it's not a mistake on the movie's part.
It's probably mine. I probably wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, because the movie moves forward in a very sort of logical, straight way, and every decision makes sense and is rooted in logic, in some way, shape, or form, which I feel like also leads to a very cold feeling movie. Like it wasn't a movie that I could attach to. And also, it's a horror movie, and most horror movies aren't like, these like emotional cry about the movie, I mean, unless you have a movie like Hereditary, which is a whole other story. If you haven't seen Hereditary, oh my God.
I have not seen it.
That movie ruined my summer.
How?
That movie is fantastic because it was one of those movies where for whatever reason, I was so invested in the characters and in the world that when the movie started happening, it was terrifying. I feel like Hereditary is an amazing horror movie. Like there was this one shot of Toni Collette's eye like peeking through a cracked open door. Anytime I walked past a door in my house after that for like a week, I was like, Toni Collette's behind there. She's gonna run across the ceiling and light me on fire.
This guy's paranoid.
Well, because that movie really affected me and it really got under my skin.
And that's how you know it's a good movie.
Right, and also Hereditary came out like 58 years after this movie, so we can't be holding them to the same standards. And also they had different cameras and different equipment and different inspirations. And also the culture of the 60s was much different than it is now, obviously.
Definitely. Yeah.
And especially the censorship in movies. I mean, like I was surprised that when they cut off the girl's face, they showed it.
I was surprised too.
I was
back
really
in the time when
surprised.
You couldn't even curse on TV.
Right. Exactly. Well, you still can't really curse on TV. It doesn't matter.
You can say more stuff,
Right. But I don't know why we're talking about Hereditary.
I don't know.
Hereditary, it's great. It's terrifying. Toni Collette should have won an Oscar for it. Cinematography is great. It's one of those movies that if you... For me, at least, I was watching it in the right... Like, I was in a movie theater. It was dark. There was, like, no one there, too. So it was especially scary. And it really got under my skin. And it really, like, messed me up for, like, a week. Because it really was one of those movies that really, like, burrowed deep underneath my skin and stayed there. And I think that's because I felt so connected to the characters because the acting was so great and the writing was so great and the cinematography was so great and everything was these slow pans and all this stuff. And it really got to me. Whereas this movie, I felt no real connection to the characters, so it didn't feel anything when anything happened. I was just like, oh, when he cut off her face, I was a little grossed out. But otherwise, I didn't feel much.
It's like when he reached the lower part of the face, that's when I started cringing a bit.
But also at the same time, then you could see that the face was super fake.
Yeah. Which
is not the movie's fault. It was 1960. Yeah. So what would you rate it out of 5?
I mean, I think this movie...
I was going to give it a 1 star.
It's definitely influential, but just because I have, different standards and I don't really like older movies, so this didn't really stick with me. I think I'd give it like a 3. It's not a bad movie at all.
No, it's just not a bad movie. We really made it sound like it's a bad movie. It's really not.
It's a good movie. It's just not... I just had different expectations and it just didn't meet them,
Like, I think I'd give this movie like a 3.5.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it sounded like I totally hate this movie, but I think it was a matter of me going into it thinking it was going to be like the best horror movie I'd ever seen and it was going to scare me and I was going to do all this stuff and then ended up not doing any of that. It's still really interesting, still really worth watching in an analytical sense. But as far as, like, if this movie was playing in a movie theater, I don't think I would.
I'd save your money.
Yeah. Well, I would just go see something else because this is playing at the film. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
This movie I could definitely see the impacts on horror that this movie.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. Especially, like, I feel like this movie, if it didn't impact David Cronenberg, then I don't know what did.
Yeah.
Because David Cronenberg is all about his body horror, and this is one of the first, body horror movies where there's actual body horror. They're cutting off someone's face and it's shown. I can imagine that being incredibly impactful.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't for me.
Yeah, me neither.
So that's Eyes Without a Face. Please don't stop listening after that, because there are a lot of people who really love that movie, and we just totally trashed it.
Sorry, guys.
We still respect the movie.
It's a respectable movie.
We just don't love it.
Yeah.
So that's.
It's like it's like the first child. You don't love it as much, but next one, you love it more.
You're like, yeah.
Yeah, you learn to.
So hopefully these movies will be hopefully these next two movies will really be the third child, where
that gets all the attention,
Yeah, right. Well, but then maybe these movies will be spoiled, so maybe we don't have to. we don't have to do these movie analogies. The next two movies we'll be watching for Wednesday are the Descent 2005 American monster movie, and then The Host. A 2006 Bong Joon-ho extravaganza. I guess.
I'm excited
I don't know if
to watch
it's supposed to be a horror movie, but Parasite was supposed to be a drama, and look at what Parasite was. So I don't know what to expect. Right. So I'm really excited because Bong Joon-ho is awesome. Yeah, I feel like we should have an outro, catchphrase. Like instead of just saying
do you want to come up with one right now?
No.
Okay. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll figure it out next time. Okay. So long.